Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Welcome to this week's MMA Mental Podcast, which is sponsored by UK Fightwear and hosted by MMA Victor Radio and MMA Victor Fancy MMA site. Okay, we've got some good guests lined up for you this week. We've done 3 interviews this week, so I've got all of those interviews on this week's show. We open up the show with Tough 17 contestant Luke Barnatt. He talks very much in depth about his time in the house, gives his views on some of the other opponents, some of the other people in the house, and tells us who he'd like to face next. And he's very honest and open, which is always refreshing. Then we move on to Steve Carl. Steve will be co-headlining World Series of Fighting 3 coming up shortly, and he tells us what the plans are for him next. If he wins this fight, he thinks he's in line for the title fight for the welterweight title against the winner of John Fitch and Josh Burkeman, which is brilliant. And then finally we speak to Neil the Goliath Grove. Neil will be fighting Oli Thompson soon on UCFC 6, and we break down that main card. Of course, that event is headlined by Ian Freeman and Ken Shamrock, and there's a lot of UFC veterans on the card as well. Obviously, Neil Grove being a UFC veteran himself, so he breaks that down. Very, very good interview. Gives us his views on all the other heavyweight bouts. So yeah, here we are. Here's all the interviews. Okay, I'm now joined by the Ultimate Fighter 17 contestant Luke Barnatt. First of all, Luke, thank you for joining us today.
It's no problem, mate. Nice to be here.
Cool. Okay. Well, we were just having a little bit of a chat off air, and obviously I wanted to stop because I wanted to get it recorded. We were just saying how manic things have been for you for the last few months. So, how are you feeling? Have you taken it all in?
Slowly taking it in. I mean, I've been on a bit of a dreamland since the UFC 3 weeks ago, and I literally haven't put a drink down and I haven't put a piece of pizza down in about 3 weeks. So I'm just adjusting to real life now. Come home, I got back to the UK I got back on Thursday. But I got back Thursday, drove all the way up to Peterborough from Heathrow, and I'm helping my friend Fabio cut weight because he fought on Saturday. So I went straight into coaching, and I cornered 6 guys on Saturday night at a local show in Cambridgeshire, and then that all happened. Then we drove back home, and then I woke up I've just been non-stop even since I got home. So, it's been pretty tough.
Before we talk a little bit about the house, what's the reaction been like from the fans?
I mean, positive. I haven't had any negativity from anyone, really. I mean, there was a few guys on Twitter or whatever, but from the fans, they seem to love it. And being the only UK guy on the show, even the Americans, when I was over in the States, you're one of our favourite guys on the show, blah, 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 so it's been a great reaction. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah,
my cousin actually met you at Wembley, and he got a picture with you, and he was over the moon, which was quite funny, because we'd already interacted before then about, obviously, I'd said to you about coming on the show after the season is finished. It's always hard doing an interview during the season, because obviously you're limited on what you can say, where if we get it after the season, we can really kind of go into detail, and you haven't got to worry about tripping yourself up, so that's why I thought it'd be better to do it now.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier now. It's all over, and you can reflect on it. And I don't have to, think too much about what I'm saying, because before it was very difficult. Okay,
let's talk a little bit about the show. Then, obviously, your first thing you had to do, of course, was, and it's become common practice now, is you had to fight your way into the house. Your opponent, I've just got getting the name here, was Nicholas Corring. Did you know much about your opponent?
When I fought Nick, I didn't know anything about him. Literally didn't know at all, apart from that he trained with the Diaz brothers, because what happens is at the tryouts, so when we try out to get on the show, I flew out to Vegas for the tryouts, and I got through the first stage, but we have to stay in a hotel for a week, and all the fighters are staying in the same hotel, and every day we have different things to do, like medicals, interviews, and all these sort of things, and you get put in groups, and Nicholas Coring was in my group, so every time we went out for a medical or something, we'd chat, and he was a really talkative guy, so I just remember that he was from the same place as the Diaz brothers, and he used to train with them. That's all I really knew about him going into the fight, because then when we get back and we make weight, and you don't know who you're fighting until 24 hours before the fight, and you're locked in a hotel room, so you can't do any research, because they take your mobile phone off you, they take everything off you, and they gave me Nicholas, and I didn't have a clue, which was
Yeah, that is a very unusual situation, because obviously, of course, now with modern MMA, it's all about game planning for your opponent, blah, 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 and obviously none of that was even possible, was it? It was just literally get in there, fight, and win.
Yeah, you literally, there's no game plan, you just go in there and like I said, go in there and fight, which, to be honest, is how I fight. I don't really have, I don't believe in game plans, you know. If I'm fighting a Abu Dhabi world champion, I'm not going to take him down, you know, but it's one of those things, you know. I don't go into a fight thinking I'm going to do a specific thing, because I feel like that's that can be detrimental to any fighter at the moment. A lot of people are sticking to these game plans and thinking, I've got to do this or I've got to do that, and if that fails, they sort of have nothing else to go to, you know. They sort of lose faith in themselves, and they start to crumble. So I just go in there and fight, and I have a set idea of what I want to do, and then if that doesn't work, I'll do something else, you know. So it kind of worked in my favour a little bit. And plus, I'm a 6'6" middleweight, which is very rare. And, you know, for Nicholas, it was probably a bit harder, because he got drawn against me, didn't know anything about me. Then I turn up and I'm 6'6", you know, they're going to be like, he's going to be like, I don't know what to do with this dude. You know, so the time restraints probably helped me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously being that height for that weight class is such a big advantage. And also as well, if you looked at your record, you've proven to be well rounded, because you've got just as many wins by TKO as you have by submission. So obviously after the first round of fights, you were actually the number one pick. How nice was that? Was you surprised at that?
I was extremely surprised. Like, when it happened, I sort of went with it or whatever. But looking back, you know, to get picked by an American, like by Chael, who's an American, I was the only English there. He's a wrestling guy. He picked a tall, lanky striker. You know, it was very odd. But now I've known the guy a long time. I've trained with him a long time. It's kind of weird. We have the same sort of ethics when it comes to training and fighting. You know, I like to push the pace. I like to keep the pace high. I like to just keep going constantly. And that's definitely what Chael does. And I did that in that fight. So looking back at it, when he picked me, all he saw in me was the fact that I was constantly putting pressure on my opponent, which is what his style he likes to do. So it kind of makes more sense looking back at the time. You know, I was absolutely shocked.
Obviously, Chael Sonnen is a huge name in MMA and a huge character. What was he like as a person?
It's hard to not sound cheesy about it or whatever, but he's the nicest man I've ever met in my life, and he really is. He did so much for. I went out to train with him for, I think I was there for 9 weeks in total, and I took John Maguire with me, my teammate, and the amount he did for me and John, which we didn't know, you know, he did so much for us. We just turned up. He gave us his truck for 3 months and said, you know, here's my truck, you know, so you can get around, so you don't have to rent a car. Every now and then he'd pop by the house just to see how we were, and then he'd bring groceries or shopping around for us, food shopping around for us, you know, to make sure our diet was on and all these sort of things that I just didn't expect. You know, I expected hardly to see him, to be honest. I expected to see him every now and then, and he'd be a busy man. But he had all the time for us in the world, and he was a great guy. So, you know, anyone who, because there's a lot of people think Chael's a bit of a dick, you know, because of the way he's perceived in the media. I know the Armour Fight sort of changed that, but there's still some people that like want to see him get beat and all this stuff. But you know, if you actually have a conversation with a guy and you sit down with him, you can realise he's a great guy.
To be fair, he come across brilliant on the show, and he come across so genuine, and with what you're saying, it just kind of adds to that. Now, obviously, there was a lot of hype around one particular fighter in the house, which of course was Uriah Hall, which was one of your teammates, and there was a lot of hype saying people didn't want to fight him. How much of that was hype and how much of that was real?
Well, I remember this quite vividly as well, especially with how it worked out with obviously Kelvin and Uriah fighting in the final. And I remember we came out of the house, we hadn't heard anything going on, and there was like a press conference or something, and Dana came out saying, you know, everyone's afraid of Uriah Hall or something like that. And Kelvin texted me saying, I'm not afraid of that bum or something like that. He said, I can't remember, you know. And I was like, yeah, neither am I. No, we're not afraid of the guy. The guy is talented, don't get me wrong. But I think during the show, the other team, like Bubba and a few other guys, they were intimidated by him. And I can understand that, because if you look at the way the guy fights and the finishes he got in those 2 or 3 fights that only time that, that the Team Jones got to see him. It's the only time they saw him. They saw him spinning kick Adam in the head, knock out Bubba in 8-9 seconds, or whatever it was, and break some guy's arm in the first fight. So they're going to be intimidated by the guy. I mean, it's natural, but if you're a fighter and you go there to fight and beat anyone, it doesn't matter. We got exposed to him in training, throughout the house, all that sort of stuff. And none of us on our team were scared of the guy. None of us really, rated him that high. We knew he was athletic and he could kick and all these things, but we all, going into the finale, we all knew Kelvin was going to win. And everyone, the hype behind it was like, Uriah's going to destroy him. If I was allowed to bet, which I'm not because I'm part of the UFC now, I would have bet my house on Kelvin beating Uriah. And unfortunately, I wasn't allowed.
That's crazy. So why were people so confident in Kelvin then? Because what did he show that made you think, obviously, that you were obviously right, that he could beat Uriah?
Well, Kelvin's Cheryl, I think, describes him the best. Kelvin is effective. He's not that good at anything. Like, you train with him, he's not an amazing jiu-jitsu guy, he's not an amazing wrestler, but he's effective. He will get submissions, he'll get takedowns, and he will grind you out. And he was an underdog. I think Kelvin, when you look at the fights in the house, I think Kelvin fought Bubba, he fought Josh, and he fought Colin. And if you speak to anyone who was on Team Jones, Bubba, Josh, and Colin were some of their toughest grapplers, their toughest guys in general, I mean, if you saw Josh's performance at the finale, he's a tough dude, when he got out of that triangle with King and all that sort of stuff. So it's almost like Kelvin had the hardest route to the final, and Uriah almost had, the way it transpired, had a really easy route to the final. So it's hard. It's really hard for the guys watching the show and to see what's going on, because you guys get fed an hour a week or whatever it is, an hour a week of something we saw for 24 hours a day, so it is difficult. I'm not trying to take anything away from Uriah. The guy he's a phenomenal athlete and he's got phenomenal talent, but Kelvin he's hard working. That's the difference. The guy, he's typical young kid, doesn't care about anything, just likes to train and works hard. He's brilliant.
Yeah, he was very likeable, and he seemed to be, every time he fought, he seemed to be the underdog. Now, obviously, once you'd got into the house, you were picked to fight straight away, and you were picked to fight a guy who was literally 8 or 9 inches shorter than you. Was you surprised at the matchup?
I wasn't surprised to get picked first. For some reason, they didn't show any of it on the show, but I actually said I reckon I'm going to get picked first for a few reasons. I was the most injured after my fight to get in the house because I fractured my orbital, so I was in pain, and I was 23 pounds overweight, within 24 hours, because I'm a big dude. I'm a very, very big middleweight, so their team knew I was heavy. They knew it. They didn't, it wasn't like a secret. It's not like I kept it quiet. So I thought they were like, I'm one of the biggest, I'm the number one pick, and I'm a bit injured, so let's take him out while we can. Now, then getting Gilbert, I was at the time I was like, whatever, but I can see the thought pattern from John Jones. He's thinking, he'll be able to take me down because I'm from England, so I can't wrestle, and he's better on the ground than me, so he'll beat me on the ground. This is what they were thinking, this is what they had in their head. And if you actually watch, because obviously I've studied the season 100 times, if you watch the first ever episode of We're All Fighting to Get in the House, when Gilbert wins, you see John Jones come on screen and say, I think Gilbert's very talented. He would be a great guy to put in against a good striker with bad takedown offense. So they assumed I was a good striker with bad takedown offense. When, like you just said, if you look at my record, I actually have a lot of wins via submission, and I actually take a lot of people down to get on top and to submit people. So, I think it was just a few presumptions. Being English, that's the matchup they decided. But looking back at it, it was a bad decision. But if I'd lost it, it could have been completely different.
How nice was it to land that flying knee?
Well, I've been practicing that knee for probably a year and a half. I remember, I don't know if you followed or saw the fight, but when I fought Ben Callum, which was February last year or whenever it was, that was like my biggest fight to date, really. And I drilled that flying knee for that fight
Did you know any of the guys by reputation before you went into the house of the 14 that made it?
I knew Tor Plang, or however you say his name, the Hammer.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's huge on the European scene. Anyone who knows about MMA knows Thor, like, in my opinion. He's ranked number 1 in Europe at middleweight, I think. Obviously, outside the UFC. He was brilliant, and I knew of him before. And I knew of Zach Cummings before because my teammate John had met him and told me about him and all that sort of stuff. But everyone else, I didn't have a clue. I didn't know anyone. So I got to meet a lot of new people and train with lots of very talented guys and got to improve my game a lot. So it was great. I'd never met anyone. I'd never actually physically met any of them before at the 14. Even through, like I said, the process of doing the medicals, and somehow I managed to miss everyone. The people that got in, I'd never met before, so I was a complete stranger to everyone.
So moving on to your next fight, obviously, you faced Dylan Andrews, and we talked there about the ground game. And it was interesting to note that in the second round of that fight, you actually won that round off your back because of how active you are with striking. And there was actually a clip where Dana White said to somebody, I can't remember who he was speaking to, that he's so pleased the judges gave you that round because you were by far the more active. What were your thoughts on the match with Dylan Andrews? I mean, it was an absolute war, and it won you the fight of the season, if I remember correctly, as well.
Yeah, I got fight of the season for the fight me and Dylan put on. It's a very frustrating fight, this fight for me. I feel like if you look at Dylan's record and all the rest of it, Dylan's a great fighter, there's no doubt about it. But I remember, and again, I didn't show it on the show, but I remember thinking, finally, after fighting Gilbert, so I fought Gilbert, I fought Nicholas Coring, before that I just fought a guy called Mathieu Perrin, before that I fought another guy called, and they always want to take me down. Everyone wants to take me down because I'm 6'6". They just want to take me down and hold me on the ground. And I saw Dylan's fight against Zach, and I saw his fight to get in the house, and he had some really crisp, beautiful striking. And I was thinking, finally, I get to fight someone who's going to stand in front of me, and we get to punch each other in the face. That's what I thought. And if I want to try and take it down, whatever. But I come out and we trained for it I had about 5 days to prepare for Dylan, I think. And we trained for a striking fight. We trained for fighting a southpaw, because he was southpaw against Zach, and a striker. Comes out, first round, he comes out as an orthodox fighter and he takes me down. And I was so aggravated because not only he took me down, but he took me down with nothing special. I should have stopped the takedown, and it made it look like I couldn't even wrestle. But it was just in my head, I didn't think he was going to try, and I made that mistake, that mental mistake of switching off and all the rest of it. So it got to the ground, and when it got to the ground, I was really active, and the fight was brilliant, and all the rest of it. But I feel like if I fought Dylan again, and I went into the fight thinking, right, stop the takedowns and punish him, I would beat him. So there was a few points in that fight, some fight-changing moments, which if I'd have just done the right thing, I would have won. And it was frustrating. But at the same time, if I'd have won that fight, and I'd gone through to the semis or whatever it was, I probably would have ended up fighting Uriah. And like Dylan, the only reason Dylan lost to Uriah is because he was beat up. The guy had three 2 to 3 round fights in 4 weeks, and the guy was beat up. And I had the same, and I was beat up. So Uriah had 3 fights, but finished them all when he was fresh and all the rest of it. And I wouldn't want to fight him. I couldn't imagine fighting after that fight that we had, like 5 days, 6 days later, or whatever it was. We could hardly walk around the house without another fight. So, I think it all worked out for the best. I was a bit disappointed with the loss. It's the first time I've ever lost as a pro. Obviously, it doesn't count, but it still counts in my head. So, it was tough.
It was mad though, because like you say, you lost the fight, but in a way, you raised your reputation quite a lot in that fight because of what you showed off your back in that second round, and because it was such a good fight. And sometimes you're almost better, in the eyes of the UFC, and we've seen this especially with the last season of Ultimate Fighter, which was obviously, it didn't do very well. You're better off losing an exciting fight than winning a boring fight. And in fact, that's what happened with you in that fight, wasn't it?
Yeah, I will never have a boring fight. It will will never happen. You know, it's not within me. I don't go in. There's a phrase there's a few guys in the gym that I train, and you know, that do have boring fights. And the way I look at it is, I said it on the series, and a few people like took the mick out of me and said, "Oh, well, obviously, you know, I fight to win." And I said that on the series, and people were like, "Well, obviously, you fight to win." But what I meant is, I don't fight not to lose. A lot of people fight and they go out there and they're worried about losing, and they fight not to lose. I don't do that. I go out and I fight to win. So whatever position I'm in, I'm trying to win. You know, if it's third round and I'm 2 rounds up, I'm trying to finish the fight and win. I'm not bothered about losing. You know, and I think that mentality showed in that fight. You know, second round I'm on my back and I'm not just holding on to him to try and get stood up. I'm trying to beat the hell out of him and get a submission. You know, to try and win the fight. I'm never going to have a boring fight. It will never happen. And I think you're right. I think that's what the fans want to see. I think that's what UFC want to see. They want to see people fight. They don't want to see people strategically try and get a W, you know. People say the most important thing in fighting is winning, and I completely disagree. You know, it's an entertainment business. We're here to entertain the fans, put on great fights, and if you win, you win. You know, like, obviously I want to win, but I want to win impressively. I don't want to win by holding on to someone for 15 minutes and the fans hating me, you know.
Yeah, and I think that paid off, for not just for you, but for everyone on the season, because if you look at this season compared to the season previously, every person on this season was given the opportunity to fight in the finale. Of course, we had Zach pull out through injury, and like I said, I spoke to Zach recently, and he'll get another fight. Tor and Adam fought previous week in Sweden. But if you look at the season before that, other than the finalists, the only 2 guys got given a chance were the semi-finalists, and even one of them was cut after losing, just because it wasn't an exciting season. Where this was the absolute opposite. It was just every fight was just brilliant all the way through.
I mean, we had dinner with Dana after the show finished. So, like, the show finished, we all drove to the hotel. Dana met up with us and took us for dinner, and he told us there and then. He said, "This has been the best season of the Ultimate Fighter he thinks ever." That's how he put it. I think season 5 and season 1 were pretty hard to beat. But he said, "Best season ever. You know, you will all get a chance to fight in the UFC." You know, so people like Gilbert, who lost in the first fight, you know, he was depressed going through the whole season. He still put on a good fight, and he's still a very talented fighter. He still got the opportunity to show himself in the UFC. You know, so there was a lot of relief that day, and a lot of people felt good about it, because I didn't know if I was going to get the fight. You know, even though I put on some great fights, and I won 2 out of 3. You know, and my third top fight, which I lost, was fight of the season. I still was like at dinner thinking, "Oh, shit, I've got to go back home. I've got to go back to, you know, Bama or something, and win another 10 fights before I even get a chance in the UFC." And you know, they gave us the opportunity. Dana put it out there, and it was Dana's decision. Dana stood up and said, "Right, you're all fighting, all of you." And he told Joe Silver about it, and Joe Silver was pissed. He didn't want to have 7 new middleweights. He wanted to have 1 or 2, but he lived up to it, and you know, we all got our opportunity to fight. And you know, I think it was the right decision in my opinion, because of the amount of talent that was on the show.
Yeah, I think it was as well, and I think it will go on to the next season, and people will look at that season and think, right, if we go in with a similar attitude, then obviously they'll hopefully get the same opportunities as well. So obviously in the finale, then you were matched up with Colin Hart, and Colin Hart obviously had the same run as you. He made it to the quarterfinals, and he obviously got knocked out quite quickly by Calvin Gastelum. What were your thoughts on facing Colin Hart in the finale?
I was worried about having a boring fight. That's all I could think about was Colin grabbing me and just pinning me up against the fence, laying on me like he did against King in his first fight. You know, that was all my thought pattern was. I didn't expect to get Colin. I thought Colin was the furthest from my mind about a fight. I actually, you know, thought I'd get Bubba or I'd get Clint Hester. That's who because we were both number 1 pick, and I thought me and Clint would have ended up fighting. But you know, I got Colin, and I wasn't worried about fighting Colin at all. I was worried about having a boring fight, because he has that sort of style to really just grind people out and be boring. You know, as much as I didn't want to be, he could have nullified everything I did and just laid on me. Luckily, that didn't happen, and we had an absolute war. But you know, that was my first thought when I heard Colin's name.
Yeah, it was a good fight, and to be fair, to him, he came out looking for the knockout, just like you were looking for the knockout. I mean, literally, you stood and traded for 15 minutes, and of course, your striking, was the difference. But it was an epic fight. To be fair, the finale was a really, really good card. There was loads of good fights on that card.
Yeah, I think with Colin, this is what I think. I think Colin wanted to take down. This is how I look, because I've got to watch the fight a lot. Colin didn't want to stand and fight. He didn't want to do that. But I think after he tried to take me down for quite a while, and it wouldn't. He got me down once, and I got straight back up, and then got him off. And he kept trying to get the takedown, and he couldn't get it. He just decided, forget it. I'm just going to hit him. And because he was getting quite, I've had a lot of discussions about this. He was hitting me quite a bit, but none of his shots he hit me with actually caused that much damage to me. Although it might look like it, I'm 6'6", and like the way my coach puts it, I'm like a willow bending in the wind, like a tree.
Yeah.
So I get hit, and I move. There's a lot of movement, so it looks like I'm in trouble a lot in the fight. But while I was in the fight, I was supremely confident. I felt like every time I hit him, it hurt, and every time he hit me, it didn't. So I was happy to stand and trade and get hit and hit him back. There was one or two shots, obviously, Colin got me with that hurt. Don't get me wrong. And he kicked me in the ribs once, which hurt. He bought it. He came to win, and I was amazed at the amount of punishment he could take, because I broke his nose in the first round, and I peppered him, for 15 minutes. It was impressive by Colin. I was impressed by his will and the way he turned up and just stood in front of me and banged. And I thought he would get an opportunity in the UFC again, but I think because they took on so many middleweights, unfortunately he didn't. But that's how it works. The finale card was sensational. It was one of the best cards I've been to. I was just at the John Jones versus Charles Summer card, which is a much, much more highly paid card, much highly touted fighters. Some of the best in the world fought on that card, and I think the finale was 10 times as good. And I think you could feel that in all of the fights. And I think we were all there to put on a show, and we all did really, really well. So I was quite proud of being part of that card.
It was. I mean, I'm a fan. I watch everything the UFC puts on. I watch, and it was a fantastic card. And you're right, it was a lot better than UFC 159. UFC 159 wasn't bad. It was a good card. There's obviously a lot of strange things, but this card was definitely ended up being better. Right, I just want to ask you some of your views on different things and different people in the house. First thing I want to ask you is, obviously at the end of round one, once you're in the house, we get the wild cards. Now, when the wild cards were announced, it was between two people on each team. It was between Kevin Casey and Zach Cummings. It was between Bubba McDaniel and Clint Hester. Now, I remember thinking after watching what I'd seen on the show that the wild card slots should have gone to Clint Hester and Zach Cummings, and of course the coaches went the opposite way. What were your thoughts on the wild card slots?
Well, I've had a lot of discussions about this again. I personally think Clint should have got the wild card on Team Jones. It's incredibly difficult for John Jones to ever do that, because he trains with Bubba, and he still trains with him now. So if you don't give he's like a friend and a teammate, you don't give him that opportunity. And I know it's not the right thing and the right way to look at it, but it's reality, it's life, Imagine training with a guy 2 months later, and he didn't get the opportunity to show himself, and he didn't get a chance in the UFC, and he was back, It's a horrible place to be put in. I think talent-wise and fighter-wise and the rest of it, Clint 100% should have got the wild card. I'm immensely happy he didn't, because the guy is a much tougher fighter in my opinion than Bubba, and if he'd have got through, it could have changed the whole ethos of the whole thing. But I think Clint should have got it on the Jones side, but Bubba did. And on our side, I think it didn't matter. I think King deserved it as much as Zach deserved it. And I think if you were there in the training sessions and you witnessed what we witnessed from King, that man is incredibly talented. He's an incredibly good fighter. He just didn't bring it out in his fights. He let himself down. He let the team down. But talent-wise, the man is amazing. He is fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
I can't go against Chael for that decision. Zach's close to me, and I'm a good friend of Zach, and I felt bad for him at the time. But if King had got given a wild card and he'd have run through Bubba and then he'd won another fight, everyone would have been like, "Oh, it was a great decision to pick rounds and he quit in between the rounds, everyone's saying he's actually got a wild card. But, I don't agree. I think just because of the way it happened, when you look back at it, you think, anything could have happened with King, if he'd got picked. Zach might have got picked and got knocked out, and everyone would have been like, oh, he should have given it to King. It's one of those decisions that, you're going to get it. You're never going to get everyone agreeing with you, so it was a tough decision for the coaches.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. We all have different views and different reasons for our views, and that's what makes it so good. Right, I'll ask you your opinion on some of the characters that I couldn't tell whether there was animosity between you and them or not. Just wanted to get what your view was. What was your view on Uriah Hall?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a fan of Uriah Hall. He knows it. Everyone knows it. Me and Uriah didn't get on very well in the house. Outside the house, it's completely different. I mean, it's a different world now compared to living with each other. He's not someone I'd want to hang out with, and he's not someone I'd want to live with. Doesn't mean I've got like a huge animosity and I hate him or anything like that. But I'm not his biggest fan, and I'm not his biggest fan for a few reasons, which probably aren't his fault. I hate hype. I cannot stand it. I hate people who get hyped up and don't live up to it, because they can't live up to it. The hype that was around Uriah Hall was like suicide. He was never going to be the man that they said he was, and we all knew that. So I felt bad for him in a way, but at the same time, some of the things he did while we were in the house were just ridiculous, and I think he approached the Ultimate Fighter in a bad way. I think he was looking at it as he was trying to dominate the house. He was trying to play mind tricks on people. He was trying to, in training, he was trying to prove to people that he was better than them. And, he was trying to win, which, fair enough. You can do that. But I've met a few people throughout my career. One of them was Randy Couture, and he spoke to me about a few things. And he was champion for a long time. And he said, winning fights is important, and being a champ is important, but being a good person is much more important. Fans will love you if you're a good person and you put on good fights. If you're a little bit arrogant, or you have a bit of Uriah Hall in you, you might become Uriah Hall could definitely be a middleweight champ in the UFC one day. Doesn't mean he's going to be the most loved man in the world, and he might get very high, and then he'll be very low, and he'll be surrounded by people that don't really care about him. That's the way I look at it. I came away from the show thinking I would train with every single person on this show apart from Uriah Hall. So, I would never want to help Uriah get better, put it that way. I'd want Kelvin to get better. I'd want Gilbert to get better. I'd want Josh to get better. There's a lot of people I'd want to get better. So yeah, I definitely had a negative experience with Uriah, but, he's under a lot of pressure, and now we're out of the house, I think that can change. We'll see.
Were you pleased? Were you really, really pleased then that Calvin obviously won that fight?
Honestly, I was. Kelvin, I tweeted it, I think, at the time. Kelvin's my hero. Kelvin is the man. I'm so happy with Kelvin. He deserved it, because look at it this way. On the finale, everyone who won got a contract, and everyone who lost didn't, apart from Uriah Hall. Uriah still got a UFC contract. Now, if Uriah had beat Kelvin, would Kelvin still have got a UFC contract? That's the question. I don't know the answer. Would he still have got a second chance? Because UFC love Uriah Hall, which is fair enough. I can see why. Kelvin put in the work, and he won the whole tournament. And no one ever expected him. No one picked him from the whole of the 14 people from the beginning. Yeah. He came through and he beat everybody. And he was like the little brother of the show. Even us, his teammates didn't believe he was going to win the fight till he won. Some of them, So I was proud of him. I was happy for him, and I want him to be the best he can be. Me and Kelvin have now got the same manager. We're going to be. I want to train with Kelvin as much as I can. I think Kelvin's brilliant, and I think when he drops down a weight class, which he's going to do, the guy can do really, really big things in the UFC. He's 21 years old. Give the guy 5-6 years, well, we could be anywhere. So I was extremely happy. I almost cried when he won. I did. I was really happy for him.
Yeah, he come across great on the show, and he's such a likeable person. Especially the whole thing with his like a infatuation with Ronda Rousey as well. I mean, what guy doesn't have a crush on Ronda Rousey? But it was just it just come across as being such a nice guy. What was your view on Josh Salmon?
Me and Josh are good buddies. You know, I like Josh a lot. When he was in the house, he's one of those people. He's a little bit like me. You know, this might be a bit dodgy what I'm about to say. You either like him or you hate him. You know, Josh, once you get over the fact that he's a little bit arrogant, because he is arrogant, he'll admit it to you. You know, he's a really cool guy. He said some brash things on the show, and you know, whatever. You know, he won his fight against King. I wanted King to win because he was my teammate, and I was a bit upset for King. But you know, Josh did the right thing, and then me and Josh partied in Vegas for the whole weekend. You know, he's a top bloke. He's a really nice guy, and on the show, I felt the same. We've got similar backgrounds. He runs a business. I used to run a business when I was younger, and you know, we had a lot in common. We're both very entrepreneurial. We both push ourselves. You know, he's my age. He was a really cool guy. On the show, I think he didn't get shown as that, and he got shown as a bit of a dick, which he is. He is a bit of a dick. But once you get over the fact that he's a dick, he's a nice guy. I know it's a bit weird and hard to explain, but you know, that's my view on him.
I know what you mean. I wasn't keen on him at first, but he kind of grew on me. I think what didn't help was at the start of the season, he went in and he was dictating to the coaches, not just who he wanted to fight, who he wanted everyone else to fight. And I think that's probably what did come off well. But then when he got in the cage, to be fair, he did back up what he was saying. So if someone backs it up, you don't tend to mind so much. What were your views on Bubba McDaniel?
I mean, Bubba's a bit of a head case, I think. I don't know, because I knew him. I messed him up, pied with him a little bit, and went out with him a little bit, you know, before the show and stuff. And he's a nice guy. He was great and that, but I think he's got two sides to him, Bubba. You know, he's a very emotional person, and he's a very cold person, and I think the house just broke him. You know, I think he really could not handle the Ultimate Fighter, and he didn't do very well. But I mean, if I was a fan watching the show, and some of the things he said in the private interviews, you know, were terrible. You know, I'm not like a big fan of Bubba. He's a nice guy. If I see him, I say hello, and you know, at the end of the day, he trains John Jones. You know, that's enough said for me when it comes to Bubba. So he's all right. I've got no like anger towards him. He's a nice guy. I've seen him at a couple of shows since. Sat with him, had a chat. I hope he's good. I hope his kids are good. You know, he's a good person at heart. I just think he's, you know, got a lot going on. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So I got on with him on the show, and I got on with everyone. You know, apart from Uriah, I pretty much got on with everyone, and I wish everyone the best. But you know, I'm definitely not going to be looking out for him in the future and hoping he wins. And you know, if he comes up against Kelvin, for instance, you know, I'm rooting for Kelvin. So you know, he's been around a long time, so he'll be fine.
Another thing I wanted to ask you was one of my friends runs a podcast in the US, and I believe you were on the show because I think he had everyone on from Team Son, and it's the word on the street, and he was doing it with Coach Jamie Huey. Was you on that show with Ramses?
Yeah, I did word on the street. Yeah, I did it once, and my teammate John Maguire did it once as well.
What were your thoughts on? Because I think Ramses is I do a show with him weekly as well. I think he's a great guy, but he's just so funny. What were your views on being on the show?
I had a great time on that show. I love to talk, and he asks a few more questionable things. You know, he really he's a bit cheeky, which was good. You know, and I think he has got a really good show. I've listened to it a lot since. I think he's had a lot of people on there from the show, and yeah, it was great fun. I really enjoyed doing it, especially with Jamie. You know, I know Jamie pretty well now, and he did well on the show as well. So you know, it was cool to be on there.
Yeah, he is. He's a bit like the Chael Sonnen of the podcast world. I always think he likes to be a little bit outspoken and controversial, but he's a huge Chael Sonnen fan. I know that much. So, okay, obviously, I said I'd have you on for 20 minutes. You did say it would be longer, and it's been awesome chatting with you. I want to ask you one last question before I let you go. Obviously, you won your fight at middleweight. You're now in the UFC. Have you got any eyes on who you'd like to face next?
I mean, I've already asked for a few people. I mean, the guy I want to fight is Francis Carmont. He's the goal at the moment. You know, I've said it before, I think once or twice. Yeah, I think in my last fight against Colin Hart, I think I landed 119 significant strikes. I think that was the number. I think in Francis Carmont's full career, he's probably only landed about 30. So in his last fight, he went a full 15 minutes, and I think he landed about 16 punches. You know, the guy's on a 5-fight win streak in the UFC. I believe he lost his last 2 fights.
Yeah,
once against Tom Lawler and once against Larkin. I watched them both, and both of them I think he lost. I think he's just boring. His fights are boring. He's not exciting. The most exciting fight I've seen him in was him against Carlos Famola, where he managed to, you know, pull off a submission, which was pretty sweet. But he's now ranked 15th in the world or 15th in the UFC or whatever. You know, I just don't think he deserves to be there. But I'm not deluded. You know, I'm 6-0. I've just got into the UFC. They're not going to give me someone who's on a 5-0 win streak. You know, I need to build up to it. And I'm hoping, my goal now is hopefully to fight the next UK card, which will be September, October time. And there's, you know, I want to fight another European. And there's Magnus Kallenblad is the guy who I've got my eyes on at the moment. He's Swedish. He's about 6'3", 6'4". He had 1 fight in the UFC. He lost. He fought Francis Camon in Sweden last year in April, and he's not fought since. You know, and I think it's your responsibility if you're in the UFC to fight. You know, that is what we're here to do. You know, and he's walking around telling people he's in the UFC, and he's not even won a fight in the UFC, and he's been sitting there since last April, and he's not fought since. I don't know if he's injured, having personal problems, whatever it is. But, you know, in my opinion, he doesn't deserve to be in the UFC, and I want to fight him, beat him, and then he can get fired, you know, because we don't need middleweights like him in the UFC who are just taking up slots. You know, Thor, who I was in with the house with, he should have been in the UFC a long time ago. You know, the guy's 17 and 4 or whatever his record is, and Magnus Kallenblad gets in the UFC a year before him and sits on the sidelines. It's not, you know, it's not good ethics. It's not what the UFC wants, and it's not what I want for the sport. So, you know, the plan is take out Magnus Kallenblad. Hopefully, you know, we'll see whatever Joe Silva gives me, but that's who I want. Then I might have to have another fight against whoever, and then I want Francis come on, in, you know, late next year or whenever I can get him. Hopefully his next fight pulls out and I drop in late notice, and then I take him out, and then I'm 15th in the world. That's the plan.
Are you going to, obviously, if a short notice fight come up, then would you be ready to take it? Would you be looking to take it?
I train like a beast every week, every day. You know, I got back from the States on Thursday. I think I got back at 1 p.m. and I was training with Jack Mason down BKK at 6 p.m. You know, I just got off a 12-hour flight. But, you know, it's what I do. It's what I do for a living. I'm a professional athlete. I train every day. So I'm going to look to fight on the next UK card, which is a bit of a way away. It's like 5 or 6 months. And then I'm going to say to Joe Silva, you want me to fight? You let me know. If someone pulls out, I will take it, because I'm always ready to fight. Although I'm a big dude, I'm a big middleweight, you know, I can cut weight, I can make weight. I cut 30 pounds in the show to make weight. I can do it again. So I'd love, you know, there's that whole don't get ready, stay ready, or whatever they say, you know. But I'm always like that. You can build up a lot of ground in the UFC by taking late fights. You know, if I fight someone like Chris Camozzi on late notice, he's ranked like 20th in the world. You know, I'd fight him tomorrow, and that means I'll be 20th in the world. You know, you can really boost your persona, get more fans. You know, it's what the game's all about, is fighting. So, you know, I'm always ready to fight, and you know, the biggest problem with the UFC and fighting in the UFC is lack of fighting opportunities. You know, if I fight in September, October, I'll have 2 fights this whole year. That is not what I'm used to. I don't know if you followed my career when I was coming up as a semi-pro, or, you know, when I was in the UK scene. In the last 2.5, 3 years, I've had 17, 18 fights. You know, so I like to keep active. I like to fight a lot, and I'm going to try and do the same in the UFC.
That's brilliant. I'd like to see both those fights you've mentioned, and obviously I'd be rooting for you, and I think you'd win both those fights as well. Before I let you go, obviously, it's been a real pleasure getting on the show. I've been looking forward to speaking to you. I think I contacted you originally right near the start of the season, so I've been looking forward to this for quite a long time. Before I let you go, I want to just give you a chance to do any shout-outs, friends, family, sponsors, and also let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter.
Yeah, well, I've got a new management just recently signed, so I'm working with De Novo Athlete, which they're over in the States. They're just getting into sports management with the UFC. They did a lot for me in my last camp, so thanks a lot to De Novo. But, you know, I've got lots of sponsors. They know who they are. It's not about that. The biggest shout-outs I've got at the moment is for my last fight in the UFC. obviously my guys over at Tsunami Gym, we've got such a tight-knit group of people over there, and we're all doing, if you look at our team, we're all successful at the moment. We're all doing really well, and it's because of what we want to achieve. And I've travelled the whole world now, and I've been to Thailand, I've been to America, I've trained everywhere, and I honestly don't believe anyone trains like we do at Tsunami, and I think we've got a special bond there, and we are world class, and I think we're starting to prove that now. So that's the biggest shout I've got is Tsunami. Obviously, thanks to One MMA and Charles Sonner, and over training with those guys, and Scott McCrory, and all the guys I trained with, Clayton, who was a boxing coach out there. They all helped me a lot as well. But I said it on the interview on Seal TV when I got interviewed after my fight. I won that fight. I didn't win that fight on the UFC because of training with Charles Sonner for 3 months. I won that for training with Tsunami for 3-4 years. Every move I used, everything I did, I learned at Tsunami. So look out for Tsunami Gym and really get behind him. We've got Jack Mason fighting next this weekend in Dubai. I'm actually flying out to Dubai tomorrow to sort that out. So he's fighting at the weekend on Cage Warriors. And then after that, we've got John Maguire fighting at UFC 161 in Canada. I'm flying out there in 4 or 5 weeks. So, schedule's busy at the moment, and we're going to do great things this year. So look out for that. And if you want, follow me on Twitter. It's at Luke Barnatt, BARNATT. And I'm actually doing a Twitter competition at the moment. Once I hit 10,000 followers, I think I'm like 9.5 or 9.3 or something. Once I hit 10,000 followers, I'm giving away a signed pair of Charles Sonner gloves, along with a signed pair of my gloves, so both of us. So you can win those. Once I hit 10,000 followers, I'm going to give away what you need to do to get those gloves. So, give me a follow. Thanks very much for having me on the show, and I love to talk, so I'm always come back. Any questions, just tweet me.
Lovely. It's been a real pleasure, Luke. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Okay, we're now joined by Steve Carl. Steve Carl will be co-headlining at World Series of Fighting 3 against Tyson Steele. Steve, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Right, obviously, I want to talk to you about this fight. It's a huge fight for a huge promotion on what's going to be a huge card. But before I do that, I want to just get a little bit of your background. So, I mean, you've been fighting for quite a long time now. You're a very experienced fighter. You started fighting professionally in 2005. What got you into mixed martial arts?
I actually got into fighting not to become a fighter. I got into fighting just to become more confident in myself. I never set out to fight at all at any level. And when I got in the gym, I fell in love with it. And I had my first pro fight 2 months later and never looked back. This fight coming up with Tyson Steele is a huge fight, but it's the same opponent I had a couple weeks ago, so the fight to me hasn't changed. We could be the main event, we could be the co-main event, we could be on the undercard. I'm still getting in the same cage with the same guy, so I'm just keeping it calm and sticking my training.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you've like you say, you've been fighting for a long time, so you've seen it all, and obviously you've fought for against big fighters and big promotions, obviously in the past. So did you have any background in any other martial arts before you started training mixed martial arts? Did you do any wrestling or boxing or anything like that?
I did wrestling in junior high and high school. I did some taekwondo when I was a really little kid. But other than that, I hadn't had a whole lot of mixed martial arts background. The wrestling really helped, with the positioning and control and everything. But, I just kind of jumped into the sport and started soaking everything up.
Who are some of the people that you train with at the moment, or who you have trained with since you've been fighting?
I started at the Grappler's Lair down in Temple, Texas, and that's where the camper UFC fighter TJ Wahlberg came out of. Me and him were training partners for a number of years, and I moved back up here to Iowa, and I have a great camp up here at Team Hard Drive. A lot of good guys up here. I also travel to Des Moines, work out with UFC veteran Kevin Burns a lot. I like to cross-train, travel around. I've been to lots of other big camps and worked out with other people. I got a good group of guys to help me out, but a lot of times it's, as a fighter, you're on your own. You got to make sure you do your own workouts and get everything in.
How hard do you find that? Are you a very self-motivated person?
I found motivation to be a little hard lately. You know, you're in the game long enough, and you get put on. It'll be 7.5 months since my last fight to this one, so I was a little unmotivated the last couple months, and now I got a fight signed, I got a name, I got a date. Now I got that motivation back, and I'm ready to start hitting it hard, really get after it.
So looking over your resume, obviously you've got a lot of wins, and you faced a lot of big names in the sport as well. What are some of your own personal highlights from your career so far?
I really enjoyed the Brett Cooper fight, just because it was first fight on like a big televised stage like that. And before that, I was a primarily ground fighter. I didn't stand and trade with a whole lot of people. And going into that fight, I was the grappler, he was the striker, and I had convinced myself that to win this fight, I have to beat him on the feet. And that's what I did, and that's how I won that fight. So I really feel like that opened up me more as a fighter, and it was a big achievement for me. So I really like to look at that fight.
Now, obviously, most of your fights have been in North America, but I noticed you fought for M1, and obviously that was in Bulgaria and Europe. What was it like fighting out of your comfort zone and fighting in a different country?
Bulgaria for M1, that was my first really big fight, and it was overseas, and I had to travel over there by myself. That one was terrifying. I was scared the whole time, but it was a great career building experience for me. And about 1.5 years ago, when I fought in Russia, I noticed that my mentality was 100% different. I was completely calm, completely confident the whole time, and I wasn't surprised, but it really felt good just to know that you've gone through that transition.
What was the reaction like from the crowd being in a European country, and obviously you being from America?
It was good, much better than I thought. Bulgaria was I wouldn't say that they were hostile by no means, but they weren't there to cheer us on. I was extremely respectful, bowed to the crowd, waved to them, hugged my opponent. Never celebrated nothing, and they cheered for me. They were respectful, and in Russia, it was just a great experience altogether. They were a great crowd, great promotion, and they were just there to see good fights. So I really enjoyed it, and the fans were great.
Now, you're currently on a 5-fight win streak, and of course, your last fight, like you say, was in November, and it was the first World Series of fighting, and you fought Remigio Blackmon, and you won by a submission. How did you feel going into that fight, and obviously fighting for this new promotion that's add a lot of profile to it because of obviously being run by Ray Seffer, which is a huge name in combat sport. So how did you feel going into that fight and fighting for that promotion?
I felt extremely calm, extremely confident. I felt that, obviously his Olympic wrestling pedigree would be an advantage for him on, as far as control. But I didn't feel like he could hurt me in any position, standing or on the ground. I didn't feel like he could put me in a position where I would be out of control, and that's kind of how the fight went. I was extremely calm before the fight, extremely calm after the fight. It just felt really good, and I can't wait to take that same mentality back in there and dial up the aggression a little bit and put on a really good show for this next World Series of fighting.
How nice is it to be promoted up to co-main event? Do you feel any added pressure? Are you excited? What are your thoughts?
It definitely brings a little more excitement to the table, a little bit more added pressure. But at the same time, I knew we were going to be the fight of the night. And now this just solidifies in my mind that we're both going to come out there, we're going to bring it, and we're going to get the fight of the night for sure. I know he's coming to bring it. This is a chance for both of us to get out there and really shine. So neither one of us are going to leave anything in the back. We're going to throw it all in that cage, and I think we're going to steal the show.
I think one of the things that stands out as well is that you both have a lot of submission wins, and of course his debut for a World Series of Fight on the same card was against one of the greatest, and that always gets a little bit of hype because it's against the greatest, and of course he got the stoppage. So what are your views on Tyson Steele as an opponent?
I think Tyson Steele is a very formidable opponent. He's young, he's hungry. He's very athletic. Obviously, he has the ground pedigree, as we saw. He has some good hands, good aggression, good speed. I think it's just going to be a good all-around fight. I think we're going to go in there and have a war. We're both very respectful also. We've been in communication. There's no bad blood. Like, we're both competitors, and we're both there. I mean, we're fighting each other, but we're working on the same page. We both want to have an amazing fight. We want to go out there and, put on a war. I don't want to go out there and have a, 2-minute slow-paced chess match where somebody gets submitted. I want to go out there and really put on an exciting fight that people are going to remember.
To be honest with you, it's a really, really stacked card as well. I mean, obviously the main event is going to be I believe it's going to be for the welterweight title. Obviously, John Fitch and Josh Burkeman. You've got Jacob Volkman versus Lyle Beerbomb. I think I was on the last media conference call for World Series of Fighting 2, and one of the things that was brought up was about crowning champions, because I think in every promotion you need to have something to work towards, and obviously the title is the big thing. With this being a co-main event, how far off do you feel that you are from fighting for a newly formed welterweight title?
Well, I'm not sure that John and Josh Burkeman are actually fighting for a title. I believe that they're just fighting, and then I think the next show or the next one after that is when they're going to bring the belts out. But I definitely feel that the winner of me and Tyson Steele will get the winner of John Fitch and Josh Burkeman for that title. I feel that right now we'd be sitting at we're the top 4 welterweights in World Series of Fighting, and I believe the winners are going to face each other somewhere down the road for the belt.
Do you feel any added pressure, or does that just excite you?
That's just kind of just a little bit of excitement. I'm not letting any pressure get to me or nothing. Like I said earlier, it's me and the same guy in the same cage, and nothing else matters. Doesn't matter what else is on the line or what's going on at home or anything outside of that cage. It's just me and Tyson in there, and we're going to have a nice little competition, find out who's better.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's such an interesting fight, especially with what you've just said. Obviously, you're both known for your submissions, but with it being such a high-profile fight, you obviously want to go out there and be exciting. So, with that in mind, then, does that make you change your game? Without giving it away, does that make you change your game plan?
I don't go into fights with game plans. I think game plans. It's good to maybe study your opponent, know what he does, and work on your defenses and your offensive off of what he naturally does. But you don't want to go into the cage, in my mind anyways. I don't want to go into a cage thinking about a game plan and then have it not go your way. Just go out there, react and adapt and attack. My game plan is just to be a tank. Whatever he throws at me, I'm going to take, and I'm going to give it right back. I want to keep the pace high. I want to keep it exciting. And, I just really want to – I'm really excited because over my last couple fights, I think I really have been unleashing more of my potential as a fighter because I've been calming down so much mentally that I'm really excited just to get in there and see what I can let myself do in that cage.
I mean, I think as well, the last 2 events that have been put on by World Series of Fighting have been brilliant. Which just as the profile of the promotion gets bigger, the profile of the fighters on the promotion also gets bigger as well. So you've got to it's got to be an exciting time to be involved with the promotion and having your fight on so high up the card as well. It's just going to make more people aware of you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I got in at the very beginning of the promotion, and like every promotion, they need faces to stand out and build the promotion. And I think I'm in a great spot that if I perform right, I can be one of those faces, and that would be just an amazing achievement and really help my stock out in the end.
Yeah, and you're in a prime position to do it. You can't ask for a better position than where you are at the moment. Well, obviously, I mean, I'm excited for the whole card. When I saw the fight was announced, I was excited for the fight, which is why I contacted you about coming on the show. And obviously, I wish you all the luck for the fight. It's going to be such a great fight. Before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. Do you want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter?
I'd like to give a shout-out to my team Hard Drive, here in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I mean, these guys prepare me for every fight. They get me ready. They get me going. I got to give a shout-out to New Life Fitness World for sponsoring me, giving me a place to work out, Complete Nutrition for providing all my supplements, my new management, Paradigm. And, yeah, I just can't wait to get out there and get after it. You can follow me on Twitter at Steve_Carl. And my Facebook fan page is just Steve Carl MMA. Hit me up and watch updates of training.
Yeah, well, I'm already following you on Twitter, and I'll be following you on Facebook as well. So thank you very much for your time today. And like I say, I'm looking forward to the fight, and I wish you all the luck. Thank
you. I appreciate you having me once again.
Okay, we're now joined by MMA veteran Neil the Goliath Grove. Neil's obviously fought all over the world and in the biggest promotions in the world. And now he will be facing another veteran, Oli Thompson, at UCFC 6 Legends of MMA. Neil, thank you for joining me today.
That's nice to be with you, Ray.
So let's talk a little bit about this. I mean, this whole card is completely stacked with some of the biggest talent, not just on the UK scene, but even further afield than the UK scene. So I wanted to talk to you, obviously, about your fight, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the other fights on there as well. So obviously, you're facing Oli Thompson. How's your training going for Oli Thompson?
Going really well. At the moment, I'm preparing for another fight just before. It's a K1 fight. So when it comes to my stand-up, I'm really looking forward to it. My preparations have changed so much. I've made some mistakes in some of my last fights, and just really working on my hands and my guard. And when it comes to Oli Thompson, I've trained in America for a year, and while I was there, I was with Oli Thompson helping Czech Congo for his preparations against Pat. And we sparred against Czech, and I was sparred with Oli Thompson. I never really thought that I'd get the opportunity to fight him. He's an extremely strong guy. I know what I'm going to be facing when I see him. There'll be a lot of clinching, and it's definitely going to go down to the ground. So for that, I'm going to Ireland to go and train with my Sambo coach, Anton Davidovich. He's a Russian. And I also train in Jiu-Jitsu with Pete Irving. He's also fighting on the card. I'm fighting on the 1st of June. Black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, it's all good, mate. Training is going well.
Well, you mentioned your K1 bout. Who are you facing, and when and where?
It's on UCMMA on the 1st of June, and it's I don't know why I can't think right now. It's his surname is Gillies.
That's fine. And is that for because you're the champion of UCMMA, if I'm correct? So is that for your title?
I am the MMA interim champion. I was meant to be fighting Darren Taylor, but Darren Taylor hasn't faced me yet. So until we do, I'm one of the champions. And then this title fight is a K1 title fight. And as you know, with UCMMA, it's with MMA gloves. I was meant to fight Sheep Parry, but he pulled out due to an injury about a week ago. So on short notice, Gillies has taken this fight. He came training down at Semtex, where I trained with Steve Gladstone, and I think he must have seen me spar with somebody and thought that he could take me. So when you spar, I think there's two ways of sparring. You spar to hurt your sparring partner, or you spar to make sure they come back sparring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've never really gone crazy with any of my sparring partners, so I might have looked a little bit easy for him. So good play. I think his record is 6-2. I've been told, and he's done some Muay Thai fights as well, and his record with that is 6-2. So he's an experienced stand-up fighter. I think he should really be fighting at light heavy because he's about 100 kilograms.
Yeah.
I'll probably be stepping into that fight at about 119, 120, sort of international heavyweight weight. And then, I'm looking
looking at this fight as a warm-up for my fight against Oli Thompson. Specifically, really training really hard in my stand-up game, because that's something I'm good at. And in the past, I sort of neglected my stand-up game and concentrated more on my wrestling. And because while you're training and fighting in America, you 90% of the guys you're going to be fighting got a wrestling background from school. So it's going to be interesting. I think Oli Thompson has improved quite a lot since his first couple of fights that I've seen him fight, especially at UCFM. He's also trained abroad, so his skills have improved. He's a lot younger than I am, so he's got a lot longer to go than I do in this game. But I feel like I'm at the top of my game right now, and feeling good about it.
To be honest with you, I mean, this card is absolutely stacked, and there's so many fights on this card that I'm excited for. Obviously, including your fight with Oli Thompson. I couldn't quite believe when I seen this lineup. To be honest with you, I mean, I think this is possibly one of the best cards I've seen put on in the UK for a long, long time. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I haven't heard really of Ultimate Cage Fighting Championships, to be honest. And then when I got called up by Carl, who arranged the fight for me, he told me that Rigo Rodriguez will be on there, Darren Towler, Paul Taylor, Andre Winner, and then he threw the bomb saying Ken Shamrock's fighting Ian Freeman. I know Ian Freeman's been calling Ken Shamrock out for a while. I know Ken Shamrock. I fought in the same card with him in Cage Rage, and I also commented with him on a couple of fights on Bama, and he's a super nice guy, really, really nice guy. So the tongue-in-cheek and smack talk that you're seeing over the internet is actually quite funny. I'm not, as you know, I'm not somebody who goes and talks. I don't do any smack talk, and I'm hoping that fight goes ahead. There's a lot of talk about it not happening, so maybe with me saying this, those guys will get into gear and definitely go and fight.
Yeah, I hope so as well. It's been a long time coming. Let's start from the other end of the card, and we'll work way up. So obviously, we're going to focus on the heavyweight bouts. So I know there's fights on there that are not heavyweight, but it's mainly focused on the heavyweight division. And we've got Paul Taylor versus Craig Burke. What are your views on those two guys?
I don't know Craig Burke that well, but I know Paul Taylor has been around the scene and he's been doing really well. If I'm right, I know he's training up north at Wolf's Lair, and he's been doing really well. I've seen a couple of his fights. He's impressive. I personally, if I was in control of him, I would make him cut down to light heavy, and he'd be a smashing machine. But it's not all about muscles. It's not all about size. At the end of the day, it's about how much you like getting hit and how hard you hit back, I think. So, and when it comes to that, Paul Taylor's an absolute machine. So it's going to be interesting to watch how that fight goes.
Okay, and then next on the card, we've got Darren Towler, obviously a name you've already mentioned, and Colin Robinson. Colin Robinson did fight in the UFC. What are your views on that fight?
That's another interesting fight. I'm actually a fan of Darren Towler. I like him. He's a super nice guy. Met him a couple of times. We've spoken to each other. We've also trained in the same gym, and I would think Darren Towler would win that fight. He trains with Ian Freeman. He does some of his wrestling work with TSG, and I know some of the guys who train there. He trains and spars with Stav Economou, and who we all know is got the hardest head in the UK. And I think that's probably just one more fighter that should have been on that card. It would have just sealed it off, to be honest, when it comes to the heavyweights. But I'll give that fight to Darren Towler.
Okay, and then we've got two UFC veterans. One of them a former UFC heavyweight champion. We've got Rico Rodriguez versus Neil Wayne. What are your views on that fight?
Neil Wayne again, very short. I think should cut down to light heavy. So does Rico, to be honest. I think of what I've seen of Rico, and I've met him a couple of times when we slept in the same house in LA. I know Rico pretty well. An extremely, extremely talented fighter who, I don't know, I think he just does things to himself and gets himself into trouble most of the times. I think goes in unprepared into fights and loses. But he has so much talent, and when it comes to his jiu-jitsu and his wrestling, and on the cards, he should beat Neil Wayne, with one eye shut. And I think it depends on whether the real Rico comes to fight that night. If he doesn't, Neil stands a good chance to have the win of his career. Neil Wayne is very stocky, very short, very strong, has got immense power when it comes to his punching. I think that's another interesting fight. But like I said, I think if Rico Rodriguez comes prepared and doesn't just worry about getting those 50 wins, I think, or is he on his 50th win already? I think Rico should take that fight.
Okay, then we move on to the main event. And like we said, this fight's been in the making for years, because this fight should have happened in the UFC a long, long time ago, and quite late on, Ken Shamrock pulled out. Should have happened again, Ken Shamrock pulled out. So for now, we're getting Ian Freeman versus Ken Shamrock. Two true MMA veterans, UFC veterans. What are your thoughts on this fight?
A lot of people have been going on about these guys are, over their time, and both of them retired, and they're coming back and retired, and all that sort of stuff. I think, at the end of the day, nobody moans about the boxers out there who are fighting at 48, 49, 50 years old, and, come out of retirement. And I think with MMA especially, if you look at Randy Couture, for instance, who fought until he was 48, 49. These guys are in their prime, to be honest. I think Ken Shamrock is just a little bit older. What is he, 50, 51? And Ian Freeman's very close to that as well. But if you retired and it wasn't because of an injury, and it's because you feel like you're getting too old and couldn't compete with the younger guys, but you stay in shape. And I know both of them are, because Ken Shamrock is a coach, Ian Freeman is a coach, so they're constantly going to be staying in shape and training. Why not? It'll be two guys who should have met 10 years ago in the cage, and it'll be quite interesting to see how aging has treated them. I'm 42, so to me, it's going to be interesting to watch. I can't look at them and say they're too old to fight. I'm too old to fight then. So another very, very interesting fight. I've sparred with Ian. He's a very, very strong guy again. I don't know too much about his stand-up game, but his wrestling is super. He did fight at the Royal Albert Hall against Frank Mir. Yeah. A very, very young Frank Mir. So but still, it was still a great win for him. Ken Shamrock was one of the founders of the game. He's one of the first super heavyweight, I said not super heavyweight, but super MMA fighters of the day. He made it famous for all of us. We all wanted to watch MMA because of him. And it's going to be a very, very interesting fight to watch.
Yeah, I think I agree. He's, like you say, Ken Shamrock's a true pioneer, and he's one of the first guys who was well-rounded. He could strike, he could grapple, and obviously that's what MMA's become now, where it's a mixture of all the different skills. Well, obviously, Neil, I really appreciate you coming back on the show. I was looking forward to getting you back on. I wish you all the luck, not just for this fight, but also your fight at UCMMA as well. But before we let you go, do you want to do any shout-outs? Any friends, family, sponsors? Let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter as well.
Yeah, of course. I'm on Goliath Grove, both on Facebook and on Twitter. And for tickets to both of my fights, you need to go to my website, which is www.neilgoliathgrovemma.com. And I just want to thank all my supporters, all my fans, my family specifically. It's very, very tiring and sort of stressful time, especially for my wife and my kids, when it gets close to a fight, because I'm out training all the time. I become a bit of a monster around, to be around. But then it's what fighting is all about, and luckily for me, I've got a very supporting family. My coaches, Steve Gladstone at Simtex Gym, Peter Irving, Craig Maddox from Excel in Southend. He's my strength conditioning coach. He's the one who's keeping me in one piece. When I've got an injury, he trains me around the injury, and every now and then he'll tweet it for me as well to make sure that I'm, staying in one piece. And then my friends just around me have been very supportive. I've got friends who phone me up and say, "How are you training? How's it going?" All that sort of things. And my fans on Facebook and Twitter have been very supportive, and even the haters have been on there giving me grief, and I love them too. So, it's been, guys like you still make it worth me fighting. Interviews and that sort of make me feel like I'm relevant and still part of the MMA scene in the UK. So I'm going to go out there on the 1st of June and do my best and win another title. And then on the 27th of June, it's me and Oli Thompson, Britain's strongest man. It's going to be a great fight, and I'm looking forward to it.
I agree. It is going to be a fantastic fight, and you certainly are still very relevant. Not just on the UK scene, but on the MMA scene in general. So, as I already said, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for the interview, Ray. It's always a pleasure.
Okay, that was this week's show. I hope you enjoyed those interviews. As always, I'll be back same time next week. I'll be working on some more interviews. We're hopefully looking to have Ross, the real deal Pearson, on next week. I'm just in talks with him at the moment. So all going well, he'll be our feature guest next week. So thank you for listening.